Yo, what's happening, world? Name's Raheem Flowers, and I've been hearing a lot of talk about the ADOS movement going on. And honestly, I've been hearing a lot of friction between them and the Pan-Africanists, which I find hilarious, which is why I even said in the previous video when I spoke about Godfrey, I don't get caught up in none of those bullshit dichotomies. But the reason why I want to talk about ADOS right now is let this be a backdrop and a reminder, frame of reference, that I'm always going to be wary of any movement that would be ran by women and or homosexuals, which Yvette Carnell happens to be that of both. I don't know much about this brother Antonio Moore, go figure. His last name is Moore. Anywho, which is very ironic, but anywho, I've been hearing about ADOS since the end of last year in 2018, and I'm gonna ask this question again. What is your end goal? Because if your end goal is just something as general and vague as you want reparation, what are you going to do with that reparation? I have to ask these self-proclaimed pro-blacks what they're gonna do when they have these movements, because as far as I'm concerned, all these movements do are contain a whole lot of confusion. Look at the paradigm. Yvette Carnell, she happens to be a lesbian. Let's look at Black Lives Matter. Let's look at their co-founders. These sisters right here that you see, Patrice Kahn, Alicia Garza, Opal Samedi, these individuals happen to be that of lesbians. And if you think that I'm just speaking hogwash and just trying to go off of hearsay and rumors, boom. Look at this right here. Meet Alicia Garza, Pride's Community's Grand Marshal who helped coin Black Lives Matter. And you know what else is funny? Just like many movements out there that are for the so-called black community as being funded by who? Jews. The Jew-owls of the world. You know what else was funded by the Jews? The NAACP, well, not funded, but founded. Its foundations were built upon the NAACP. And you want to know about one of the founders? The Rabbi Stephen Wise is also one of the main prominent figures of the Zionist movement. You know, the same ones that's causing the lack of peace in the Middle East, even though a lot of these so-called Islamists are doing their part in fucking shit up as well. But that's not the point. We can save that for another video. Anywho, if you've noticed the paradigm, when there's always a Jewish person behind these so-called black movements, and there tends to be some sort of effeminate homosexual or lesbian involved. Look at Bayard Rustin. Look at James Baldwin. Look at all these other figures out here like Michelle Wallace, who talks that pro-blackness. And I've mentioned Michelle Wallace in my video that they restricted when I was talking about the Jewish angle and how Gloria Steinem set that broad up to get that heat for making this book known as The Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman. See, I don't put shit past anybody, especially not these movements who have no solid foundation, who have no end goal. You know, it's funny that fool Tariq decided to take it upon himself to align himself with ADOS, but I bet you a lot of cats wouldn't even just peep game and notice that's just a subliminal shot at old simp ass Umar Johnson. I have my fair share of things I say about old simp Watkins. Speaking about another old simp, Boyce Watkins said how Yvette Carnell is like you're prompting individuals and you're bringing about a certain energy, and people who will have those ideologies of a leftist movement, of a communist movement. That's what he said. I'm slightly paraphrasing him, but that's one of those once every other blue moon moments I can agree with Boyce Watkins. That's all you see in a lot of these Negroes. You know they have a show out there called Dear White People? And the first thing I noticed was it was a black woman who was speaking on the intercom or on the radio. See, they use our sisters as pawns. They really do. And in addition to that, this is something else I want to say. How long do you think that show would last if there was something called Dear Jews? They would fuck around and compare that series to Mein Kampf or Mein Kampf, which is My Struggle in German, which is Hitler's book talking about the Jews. That's what they would compare that show to if there was a show called Dear Jews. But you can see people want to take that racialist angle, especially these feminazis. I mean, look. When I look at the ADOS movement, this is how I know a lot of you niggas have such a limited perspective and a limited amount of knowledge on history and just overall dynamics of geography. Think about it. And I'm glad that I referenced Antonio Moore earlier, because a lot of so-called blacks, especially here in the Western Hemisphere, guess what? You're an extension of a lot of Europeans. That's why your surnames, that's why you have these British surnames, last names. My last name is Flowers. I mean, I know where my roots come from, and the funny thing is, ADOS doesn't apply to a brother like me. But then again, it doesn't apply to brothers like Malcolm X, who many of these pro-blacks revere, because his mother comes from Grenada. It wouldn't apply to Dave Chappelle. It wouldn't apply to Louis Farrakhan, who Yvette Carnell went in on, but Farrakhan is an agent. He's an agent just like how she is. Well, or at least agent-minded. But they're both of that agent ilk. Farrakhan, Yvette Carnell. That's what all these pro-blacks are. Y'all do is create chaos. You create dissension. You cause all this confusion. It's just one big distraction with all these bullshit dichotomies. With these liberal blacks, with people leaning towards black conservatism. When you have cats out here talking about Pan-Africanism, Moorish Science Temple. Going back to the Moors though. That's what you're an extension of. Especially with the so-called mulattoes. Because, let me tell you something. When it came to the Barbary slave trade and the white slave trade, a lot of the Moors had sex slaves. And a lot of it was going down in Europe. And you had dudes like St. Pedro who was on board with the Italian Jew known as Christopher Columbus. And guess what else happened? You thought it ended there? No. You had plenty of melanated individuals who was of that Moorish ilk. And they took it to the States. I mean, that explains the surnames. That explains the fact why many black people don't want to be aligned with Africa, even though ironically the Moors' origins are said to be in northern Africa. You know, places like Morocco, Algeria, Sudan, Egypt, whole 9 yards. But yeah, you're really a descendant of the Moors. Even Antonio Moore. Why do you think I grew up hearing so many black people proclaim having Irish in their family? But going back to what I said about even, the Caribbean background, like, that means the ADOS would, everything that happened with the Haitian Revolution. And the funny thing is, This goofy ass nigga Tariq had a whole documentary called the 1801 when the Haitian Revolution was going down. So what was the point of you making that documentary if you're gonna be a part of the ADOS movement, which has exclusion towards the so-called Black Caribbeans or the Polynesians or the Pacific Islander blacks or the blacks in what is called Africa? You see what I'm saying with all the confusion? Even though if you look down if they were to take a DNA test and thoroughly do any research with their family, they're going to realize that they have Caribbean roots, African roots, or even roots from the Pacific Island. I'm not a Pan-Africanist by no means, because I look at goofies like Umar and I think about cats like Irritated Genie. I think about all these dudes, and this is just one thing I don't agree with Pan-Africanism. You can't write every single melanated person off as being of African descent when there are many melanated individuals who came and were already in these lands, like in the States where we have indigenous blacks, like in places like Melanesia, like places like Italy or Utrecia. Many places in this world, in this nation. And then you have the Israelites, like, you see? But my point in making this video is you have to always consider the source. What is the lineage of these individuals? I mean, Yvette Carnell, as far as I'm concerned, she looks like a so-called mulatto. You have to think about what their lifestyle's like, who they align themselves with, what is their overall belief system, and what is their overall agenda, and what is their end goal. You have to ask these various amount of questions. You always have to consider the source. You can't just blindly follow a belief. You know, that's why I think about all these niggas, like, even like Sarge. For somebody who harpers on critical thinking and emphasizes on it, you don't seem to be critically thinking yourself. But then again, you're the same one who said in the video that there are people who are born gay. So this is why what these dudes say are a complete joke. You want to talk like you're coming from a place of establishing a patriarchy like that nigga Sarge. You want to talk like you're coming from a place of this alpha male masculine energy, but your ass still worships the feminine principles. You still idly worship these broads who worship these white Jews and these other white men. Fuck out of here. And that's pretty much what I gotta say. Peace out, everybody.